We are very happy to have with us this evening the authors of a new book entitled Waves of Hope by Val and Ron Negra. And Val and Ron, welcome. I see you there. You're playing with our Hollywood Squares too.
We are.
Thank you, Rich.
He's the author. I'm only the publicist.
So anyway, David, are you ready?
Yeah, let's give it a shot. I've got the YouTube video queued up, but I tried to set it up so we didn't have to watch too much of the casino commercial that precedes the presentation. But this being Zoom, who knows what's going to happen?
Well, it could be just a word from our sponsor, let's say. All right, so here's a CBS News clip about the hero of the radio story, Agnes Negra. Roll it, Dave.
Letters and postcards dating back to World War II, unboxed in New Jersey decades later, tell the story of how a now 101-year-old woman helped bring peace to families of prisoners of war. CBS 2's Jenna DeAngelis has the story from Lacey Township.
Imagine not knowing where your son is, and then you get a letter that he's alive.
Agnes Joan Negra couldn't imagine it any other way. So during World War II, that's what she did, to let families know their soldiers, American prisoners of war, were okay.
She got a shortwave radio and listened to Radio Berlin every night, and she would jot down the name of the prisoner that was mentioned and his home address, and she would write a letter to the family.
Taking down 5 names announced each night, hoping to hear one name in particular, her brother-in-law, Sergeant John Negra, missing in action.
She never heard that, but she continued listening, and she would send it to families all over the country, a note hoping that she would relieve their emotions a little bit by saying, your son is alive.
Writing more than 300 letters.
This was 1943, May 19.
Getting back more than 200 responses.
The news of his safety was like the happening of a miracle after 5 weeks of extreme anxiety.
They were happy to hear from me. That made me do it more.
A number of the letters that came back said, you've given us hope that maybe we'll see our loved one again.
These letters and the hope they gave families were a secret to her family. She tucked them away after the war, only showing them to her son in 2019.
So decades went by and you had no idea your mother did this?
No idea. They never discussed the war. I knew my father was wounded at the Battle of the Bulge, but other than that, they never discussed it with me at all.
So for her 100th birthday, he compiled the letters into a book he got published, Waves of Hope, including how her brother-in-law we mentioned earlier was found. And now these letters, this time capsule, are forever etched in history.
I'm happy that Ronnie made the book. I really am. It brings it all back.
A published book is hard to top, but her family found a way. For her 101st birthday, creating photo albums like this one with pictures of people reading her book around the world. Now that's a story. In Lacey Township, New Jersey, Jenna DeAngelis, CBS 2 News.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
So Val and Ron, tell us a story. I'm sure you've been quizzed so many times about it, but I don't think it gets old. I mean, it's absolutely amazing about your mother, Ron, being 101 years old and so lucid and knowing what she can tell like now. Can you go over some of the high points of how you all got into this? I know it's been recent. Like you said, it was just something that you discovered a couple of years ago.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Rich. Thank you for inviting us tonight, guys. It's great to see everyone. My mother in 2019, she was getting to the age, she's in good health and her hearing is not that great, but my mother has a very, very good memory, always has, excellent memory. She could tell you what happened on March 28th in 1938. And I always marveled at that. But in 2019, I started going through some of her things. My mother is a great saver, but she's the most organized person you'll ever meet. So everything's always been organized, filed, labeled, all of that. And I came across some boxes. One was said 1946 and it was sealed. And it was a large box. And I said, Mom, what is this all about? And she said, oh, they're the letters that I got back from the prisoner of war families. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, just start slow. So she started explaining that in early 1943. Our American flyers were in 42, actually, our American flyers, and trying to help the Brits save their country when we entered the World War. Were flying over Europe, and the B-17s and B-24s were shot down, many of them. And some did not survive. And some of the flyers parachuted down throughout Europe and were captured and became prisoners of war in German prison camps. Well, there was a lot of pressure on the German government, the Nazis, to start giving out the names of the prisoners. And they refused to do that for a long time. The country was really torn. Any of you have read this history. The country was torn probably 50-50 or even less than 50% that wanted us to get into another world war. Even with Japan, that kind of pushed us in, Pearl Harbor, of course. But most of the people did not want a world war. And the Germans knew that, the Nazis knew that. So they were playing their propaganda games to try to convince Americans of a couple of things. One is that they were human and they were being human to their prisoners. And the second thing was, you really don't want this war to go on long, America, so you shouldn't support it like it's needed. So my mother was a World War veteran, an older guy that lived the next street over, knew my family for years. And he approached my mother and father. My dad was still home, had not been put into the Army yet. This was late 42. My mother had just given birth to my sister. And my parents were basically newlyweds. They were married 13 months, 14 months, I think, at the time.
Sorry, what town was that?
That was in Nutley, New Jersey.
It wasn't still in Nutley. Okay.
Yeah, my father and my grandfather were born there. So there's a lot of deep roots on my father's side. My mother was born and raised in Boston, and they moved to Nutley in 1938. Anyway, the World War I veteran approached my family and said, look, I have a shortwave radio. And my understanding is that every night, the German government is starting to announce 5 names of prisoners of war. And you could pick that up on Radio Berlin, if you can get Radio Berlin. And my parents were very interested in that. For one thing, my father's brother, John, was in the Army Air Corps. And eventually his plane was shot down over Yugoslavia on his 29th mission, I believe. He was in from the very beginning, well, before the war actually started. And my parents said, yeah, how do we do that? And he said, well, I have a Philco console radio with a shortwave band that I'll give to you. And you could listen to this and see if you can pick up the prisoners' names. So my mother tuned in, and my mother didn't know shortwave radio, by the way, from, a furnace. She had no idea what it was, but she learned how to do it. And she listened in every night. And at 6:00, 5 names were announced of American flyers. And what she heard was Joe Smith, Wichita, Kansas. So she would sit down and write a letter to the family of Joe Smith, Wichita, Kansas. And thank goodness for the Postal Service, then they delivered the letters. My mother wrote over 300 letters over a period of 43 and 44. And she received, and anyone that has a marketing or research background will be amazed at this, because that was my background, and I was amazed when I started reading these letters. She received over 200 responses from families that showed their gratitude, but also expressed hope that they would see their loved one again. My mother's letter was, I heard the name of so-and-so, your loved one, Joe Smith, and he's alive. That was really her first line. Many of the people that wrote back to her said, we had no idea he was missing in action. It's our son, it's our father, it's my husband, it's my brother. We had no idea he was missing in action. Well, we may have known he was missing in action. We didn't know his whereabouts or if he was alive. So they expressed their gratitude to my mother for learning. And in many cases, learning that he was alive. In many cases, it was the first word they heard. The government, the War Department, in some cases did notify them that their son or father, whatever, was missing in action. But that's all they knew. So I started talking to my mother, and her mind is extremely sharp to this day. Can't hear much, but she's sharp. And I started interviewing her. And I said, Mom, I want to know a few things. What was it like in Nutley, New Jersey on December 7th, 1941? What was it like after Pearl Harbor? What was it like when Dad left? What were your surroundings like? What were your neighbors like? What was happening? Please tell me all of that. and then tell me what happened during the war and what you did. So I took notes. She had no idea what my purpose was. I never told her. But I would write up a little more of the story, and I wanted it to be factual. And like I said, my mother's mind is really good. My mother's never told a lie, believe it or not. She really, I tried to get her to lie for me when I was in school, but she wouldn't take it, wouldn't go for it. So I knew it was all factual. And I decided this needed to be a story that she would like to read. Her 100th birthday was coming up. And that was 2019, November 13th. So I went to a printer and I said, here's a manuscript, would you just print it? I'd like to present it to my mother at her 100th birthday celebration. A lot of family and friends were going to be there. I did that, and people started going through the book saying, Ron, this should be published. I don't know why. This is a fabulous story, and you should really get it published. That was not our intent or objective. That winter, Val and I we were sitting on the beach in Florida, and the lady next to Val said, where's Ron today? And she said, oh, he's upstairs in the unit. He's working on his manuscript. He's changing some things. And the woman inquired, what are you talking about? Val told her the story, and she read the manuscript after she asked us to give it to her. And she said, my friend is a publisher. I'm going to contact her. If it's okay with you, I know she'd be interested. So we did that. And the next thing we knew, the book was published. She had great interest in the book. And she said, Ron, this is a story that should be told. Getting back to and I know you guys are into this stuff, but getting back to the console, there's a picture in the book that we found of myself and my sister when we were small in front of it. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Very well.
Yeah, there's Ron and his sister. She doesn't like the outfit she's wearing. I told her, too bad. You're going in the book. Okay. But, and the other thing I wanted to mention too is besides the story, the printer painstakingly put the letters in the book too. So the letters, how many letters, Ron?
Well, there's only 75 in the book.
75 are in the book.
We still have 125 sitting in that box.
Some of them are hard to read. So Ron also wrote out what the letter actually says, but you can actually see the postmark and the stamp, and some of them are have little American flags on them, and they're penny postcards or letters, but they're all throughout the book, and and then the story is kind of woven throughout the text.
Now, we don't have the radio, unfortunately, but in the process, the book had really just come out. Val heard about InfoAge, and she said to me, Ron, do you know there's a museum in Wall Township, New Jersey? And I said, no, I'd never heard of it. And Val had contact with Ray Chase, who's a wonderful man, and he described what InfoAge was all about and asked us to take a trip up and spend a little time with him, which we did, gave us a fabulous tour. We were very amazed at what exists there. Of course, my first question was, some of the gentlemen I met that day, and some of you may be on here, I don't remember, but my first question was, hey, all you guys have gray hair, or most of you do. What's going to happen down the road? Not that I'm anticipating any of you leaving us soon, but this is such a fabulous experience going through this and seeing this, especially I'm totally naive to this. I've had radios in my life and record players and things like that, and TVs, of course, but I never really dug into the history of radio or shortwave radio, especially, or TV.
And we had no idea what we were going to find when we came there, what it was all about. And so Ray said, well, I'll take you around and I'll show you as much as I can. And Ron and I both said, well, let's go. I don't know what it's going to be about, if they even have a radio that looks like the shortwave, or, what have we got to lose? Let's go. Well, afterwards, we were just floored. We said, oh my God, we're so glad that we came there. It's like such a wonderful place. And it just, just standing there with the radios, and it was just unbelievable. I couldn't believe that we found this gem of a place that, had really so much history, and, we're posing by the radios and everything. And then we said to Ray, can you find out about the radio for us? And he got in touch with, and I think it's Al Klaas or Class.
Al Clays, he's just below.
Al Clays,
He's
hi,
just
Al.
right now.
Hi, Al.
And they said it was a Philco model 41-629P. And the 41 designates it as a 1940 model, sold in 1941, because Ray said that radio manufacturers design their radios for the forthcoming year. Okay. It was a nearly top of the line model with a record player in the front that swung out from the front of it. And Ray was telling us, which we did not know, that as soon as we were at war with Germany, German nationals in the United States were not allowed to have shortwave radios, and possibly cameras as well. And if they had a radio with shortwave capability, they were required to have it modified to disable outgoing shortwave capability, which, we had no idea. His mom had no idea about this, but we had heard then from other people that the FBI was actually going around to people that had shortwave radios to make sure that they were only getting information in and not sending information out. So, that was all very interesting.
My mother said the message was, do not believe what you hear and question everything you're told, because there was so much propaganda out there, and it really didn't know what was true and what wasn't true. So she was cautious about that. But her goal, her mission was to write down those 5 names. And her biggest worry was that she was going to miss the night because my sister would have needs or whatever as an infant. So there was a woman in Ohio that contacted my mother when she heard what she was doing. And she said, I want to form a group. And we're all going to have shortwave radios. And we're going to have assignments. So Agnes Negra, you're going to have Monday and Tuesday, or you're going to have Monday at 6:00, and you listen to that broadcast, Radio Berlin. And Mary Smith, you have Tuesday, and Joan, you have Wednesday, and so on down the thing. They didn't want to take a chance of missing a person's name, a flyer's name, a captive's name. So she was forming this group. And my mother said, I'd love to be a part of your group, but I can't be on a schedule like that, because if I miss Monday night, it's because my daughter's not well or I'm attending to her needs, but I'll try to do it. So my mother really did it as an independent on her own. Now, a couple of things happened, which were, one thing specifically, when I was sitting with my mother and interviewing her, and I said, Mom, tell me about Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th. And she said, well, Dad and I went to Holy Family Church in Nutley, New Jersey, our 11 o'clock mass. They never deviated from that. It was 11 o'clock. And after that, we went to Grandma and Grandpa Negra's house in Nutley, and we had Sunday dinner. And my father was one of 4 brothers. So the other 3 brothers were there. My dad and his oldest brother were 2 that were married recently, and both women were pregnant. With that said, my mother said, yeah, the boys, your father and his brothers went into the parlor. I always love that. And they were listening to the New York Giants, Brooklyn Dodgers football game. Now, my mother's sharp, but I doubted her this time. I said, Mom, it was the Brooklyn Dodgers was a baseball team. It wasn't a football team. She said, Ron, the game was on WOR. It was 2:00 in the afternoon, and they were listening to the Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Giants football game. So I just kind of let that pass a little bit. And then I did some research, and I found out there was a Brooklyn Dodger football team that played the Giants on that day. So I had to buy what she told me. Never doubt my mother. Anyway, Val and I just kind of tucked that away. I did put it in the book. Now we visit InfoAge. And Ray said to us, would you like to take a walk down? We have a room set up like a parlor from the 40s. And we said, sure, why not? We walked in, and there was a couch there with a doily and radio and a console radio. And Ray said to us, would you like to hear the broadcast that day of the announcement of Pearl Harbor? And we said, sure. Never expecting to hear the exact broadcast that my mother heard, where they said the New York Giants and Brooklyn Dodgers football game. And what amazed me when my mother told me the story is they broke away from the game just for a few minutes to make the announcement about Pearl Harbor. In consideration of WOR reporting the news, they really didn't have much information. The president didn't have a lot of information. So we listened to it in amazement. Ray pushed the button. And they said, well, we're going to break away now from the New York Giants, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, Brooklyn Dodgers football game. And Val and I kind of pinched each other.
We couldn't believe it.
It was exactly like my mother said it was.
First of all, we couldn't believe that we were in this parlor at InfoAge with the doilies and the couch and, you know, the cathedral radio. I mean, really felt like we were back there. And, you know, he had just experienced this, writing this and going through it with his mother. And then when Ray turned the broadcast on, we were just like, you know, I'm telling you, we talked about this that night, all night long. We just kept saying, we can't believe this place exists.
We've been on radio shows around the country.
We tell everybody.
And they asked us, what was it like? You know, we always talk about InfoAge.
Yeah,
we said, hey, guys, I don't live that far from InfoAge. I never knew it existed.
We joined. We're members now.
Yeah, I said, I never knew this existed. But
we're members.
One thing I will never forget is when this man, Ray, brought us into this room and played the recording of the announcement of Pearl Harbor. You know, it's exactly.
Wouldn't it be great to have Agnes sitting in that parlor? Wouldn't it great?
Oh, I know. Well, we talked about getting her there. Of course, then, you know, the pandemic hit, but she would love nothing better than to go there and, you know, be sitting in the parlor and be a part of the whole thing and see all those old radios. Because we took pictures with Ray, you know, with the radios and everything, and the book, and your mom would probably love that.
How would we get her? Do you have a disability? Well, she's in a wheelchair. Do you have access that we can get her in that way, or?
Sure.
Oh, you do? Okay.
All right. So definitely when the weather gets warmer, that would be something that, you know,
I would love to do it.
She would probably love it.
That would be amazing. That'd be amazing photo ops too for everybody involved.
I love that idea. I'll make sure it happens.
So just so you guys know, and we're not, you know, just telling you this, we've been invited to so many different things, even organizations that aren't like yours, that probably don't know a thing about radio, or and we've repeatedly told folks, if you ever get to New Jersey, you got to go to this place. If you have any interest whatsoever in history, it's really quite a remarkable museum that many New Jerseyans, I don't believe, know, because we've asked our friends and our family, and they live at the shore. They live at the shore.
Unfortunately, we deal with that all the time. But
I found out about you guys by accident, because what happened was, I think you saw at the end of that broadcast, you know, what do you get her then for her 101st birthday after you got her the book for the 100? So I've been compiling, you know, pictures. A friend of mine sent a picture and a little quote, and I said to Ron, you know what, we're going to do an album. So we have an album of people posing with the book, like selfies, or sometimes people will take their picture, and then I put down what their quote is and what they said. So I was posting this since September on Facebook every day. And I'm a member of the Art Educators of New Jersey because I taught elementary art for 27 years. And one of my fellow art educators lives about 3 blocks from where you are. And she said to me, Val, you need to get to InfoAge. And she mentioned someone, I think, whose name was Fred Carl. Fred Carl. She said, you need to find him and you need to get there. And I was like, okay. And that's how we found you guys.
Well, I tell you, it would be a great photo op to have Agnes in the parlor and your contacts with CBS television to come down and film her there.
Super.
In InfoAge.
Yep. Yeah.
Be interesting. As a matter of fact, our congressman, who we don't know, called Val the other day, his associate, and wants to meet my mother. And I said, well, this is a great photo op for him. You know, it's beautiful. And it's nice for my mother to be recognized, of course. You know, I'm not taking that away. But we've gotten a number of invitations. And I'm so glad. I think we were on a Boston radio station, WBZ, I think it was, and they had people calling in. And one of the first questions was, what kind of a console was that? What kind of a radio was that, you know?
Thank God.
And fortunately, we were at InfoAge, so we had the answer. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a clue.
Fortunately for Ray and Al, I had the answers, because before that, I had no clue. All I had was a fuzzy picture of a shortwave. And, you know,
of a console.
Yeah, Ron he was writing, and one day he came in and he said to me, look what I found. I found this picture. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you have a picture. We have to put that, in the book. But
how did you guys hook up with Lisa Spars? Because that's where I first saw you at the Nevick
Okay.
Oh, that's right, Rich.
show.
What happened was Jerry Berg, okay, who is a radio guy from up there in Boston, was just Googling one day. He was Googling shortwave, ham operators, whatever, and Ron's name came up with the book. So he went on Ron's website and he saw the book, and he knows Lisa Spar, who wrote the book that's called Radio Listeners, The History of World War II Radio Listeners. And these were all people like Mom that wrote these letters and listened through these clubs. So he called Lisa and said, you may want to contact these people because they have a book about a radio listener from New Jersey. So she contacted me and she said, okay, you need to get my book and I need to get your book. So that's what we did. We each got each other's books and we read them. And then, we kept going back and forth and talking to one another through texting or, on Facebook or whatever. And I was reading her book, a strange coincidence. I was reading her book late at night and it's so good. And I was reading everything, even the name of each radio listener in the back. And the New Jersey radio listeners, I saw the name of the father of one of our dear friends from not far from here, from North Bergen. And I said to Ron, oh my God, Nick's father is in Lisa's book. So it turned out that he's radio listener number 160 and my mother-in-law, Agnes Joan Negra, is radio listener number 159. So they're right next to one another. So there's all these coincidences. And Lisa is trying, like we're trying also, to get some type of recognition for people, like Agnes, who are still around and did this, and, get them some type of recognition for what they did.
Mom's been named a home front hero in the National Memorial,
World War
II Memorial in DC. And guess how we found out about that? Val and I last summer went to Washington, D.C., well, before COVID. And I said, gee, Val, let me see if my dad's name is in the computer. And the computers were down at the kiosks. And finally, we found one that was operating. I put my father's name in, who was a World War II combat veteran, wounded at the Battle of the Bulge. And I have all his papers, so I know that's true. And my mother's name came up. And it said, Mrs. Negra is a home front hero for doing what she did during the war. Now, how they found out about this, I don't know, because my mother never discussed it with anyone, including us. We had no idea. She may have told her brother, younger brother at one point. I don't even know if he realized to the extent she did things. But so Val and I looked at each other. I said, I'm glad Mom's a home front hero. Dad's had 3 back surgeries from the war and all kinds of things, and I could hardly find his name in there. And I didn't know what it was for. So, when we came home, we started talking to her, and one thing led to another, and that's how we found out what she did.
A little research I did with your book and Lisa's book and some other resources. I understand that at the time the State Department, be it the FBI, wasn't that happy with the POW monitoring, the groups, that they felt that it was lending itself too much to the German propaganda, that it was working too well with the Berlin radio, what they called, the show was called Calling Back Home, and that it was having too much of an effect on the American population, which wasn't true, but I believe the State Department felt that way, and they weren't that happy with all of those folks doing this.
That's true. There wasn't a red carpet
right
asking them to do this. As a matter of fact, there were 2 women, and I think they're on the East Coast. I have to research that out. They were putting propaganda out over the radio every night. And the propaganda was for the German government. And they were American women. And they were finally arrested by the FBI after months and months of propaganda that was out. They were spreading false things. And their goal was to make the American people feel that the prisoners were getting well treated. Yeah. Now, in some cases, the flyers, history came back that the flyers were treated fairly. In other cases, they weren't. What's sad, my mother has one regret, and the regret is that after the war, she never followed up with all those letters that she received and all those families to see if their loved ones came back. And the reason she didn't do that is she felt it was very personal. And if they didn't return, she didn't want to open up emotional wounds, because the letters that, if you read the book and read the letters are emotional. I can't imagine being a parent or a wife and not getting information back and wondering if your husband, your son, your brother, whatever, is alive day by day, worrying. So that was a lot of great emotions there. My mother did not want to open up old wounds. She also felt that there was a privacy thing there, that she didn't want to infringe on anyone's private life after the war. When I told her that I was going to get the book published, she said, well, in this case, Ron, it's been so many years, and I'm sure, she said, I'm 101 or 100 at the time. She said, I'm sure that many of these people are no longer with us, and the privacy thing won't come into effect.
The book affects people, though, in so many different ways. I met another fellow on Facebook. They were selling letters. You could buy letters by George Washington or whatever. And I just made a comment and I said, well, instead of buying fake letters, why don't you get a book about real letters? And I put Ron's website in there. And this guy pops in and he goes, hi, my name is Mark White. I'm from Alabama and I have a radio show. I just went on your husband's website. Can I call you guys? And we were like, okay. So he called us and he's like, I want to put you on the radio in Alabama tomorrow. And we were like, okay. So he was so taken by this story. He's a young guy. His radio station is just to report good deed doing, okay? But he was so taken by the story that he started researching the letters. And he started, like, he would write to Ron and say, oh, I found this gentleman is buried here and this man became a lawyer. And I mean, he was just so taken by it that he needed to delve deeper, into the story, which it was really interesting to me.
The letters came from farm people, rural people, city people, little town people, a true cross-section of America, I believe. And reading them, you really get that sense, heartwarming, caring people. But since the book is out, we're getting letters from people we don't know. I'm getting letters back from people that are notes back from people and calls from people I haven't seen in 50 years. Somebody I went to grammar school with that moved away from Nutley and moved to California and heard about my book, picked it up and wrote a note and said, wow, this was some story. And I remember your mother. I can't believe she did all this. But we're getting such heartwarming that as a man from Long Island, this really got to me. This really touched me. And he wrote a letter to Val. And he said, I enjoyed this book tremendously. I heard about the book, however. And he said, I'm sending you a picture of me and my grandson. And he was on the sofa with his grandson, who was 8, maybe.
Right.
And the caption under the picture was,
you're never too young to learn about greatness. That got me. I was like, I wanted to hashtag the world with that. You're never too young to learn about greatness. And the day after we were on the CBS News, that little boy saw it on the news. And he said to his grandfather, I want you to take a picture of me in front of the American flag. And he's saluting my mother-in-law with the American flag in the background. I mean, just all ages from, 100.
Well, obviously, Agnes, and so many us people here that you see in the cubes here, our parents were from that greatest generation.
That's right.
And that speaks a whole hell of a lot,
It's remarkable. Somebody said to me, you've got to get a book now and put all the letters that you've gotten from people around the country, because everyone references my uncle was a flyer, my father, my grandfather, different things. And even if the parents weren't in the war, they referenced something the parents did, what their life was like, or My father was not taken in because he had flat feet. Some lady wrote. All different stories, kind of intertwined with each other. And somebody said to me, Ron, why don't you put all these letters in a book? And I said, I'm not going in that direction. There's a privacy factor there too. I don't want to share their thoughts like that. We're sharing it with my mother. By the way, my mother, you can call my mother tomorrow, you guys, and you could say, we're going to donate $1,000 to you. My mother would say, oh, that's nice. Or we can hand her this book or these books that Val's put together.
This is the second album. I'm already heading towards the third. This is the little boy that wanted to salute her.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm on the second album. And I said to Ron, I'm almost at the end of this album. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be 3 albums before we get done. I mean, the book is in Aruba, it's in New Zealand, it's in England.
It's all over.
So it's been amazing.
Would you guys mind it if we opened up for some Q&A?
No,
absolutely.
Okay, Dave, you want to de-mic everybody so they can ask questions? I know Bob Tevis has a question to ask.
Yeah, hi, Valerie and Ron. Thank you so much for your story. And I appreciate the part about your uncle being shot down on the 29th mission, because my father made it to 30 in the B-17s, and I know 29th was close to the end, so sorry he had that. But the question I have for you is really about the Radio Berlin stuff. Did they actually broadcast the street addresses of the people, or did your mother have to, did they say something like Fred Smith from Canton, Ohio, and your mother had to figure out which Fred Smith or what street address he was on? Write the family?
Yes, God bless the Postal Service, because my mother wrote the letter, and she showed me this. She wrote the letter to the family of Fred Smith, Canton, Ohio.
And that was it.
They found the family and was delivered to that family. What amazed me were the people from New York City. My mother wrote Joe Smith, New York City, New York. And she said nothing came back, but she got letters back from people, the family of, I don't know how they did it, but they did it.
There were no zip codes.
There was no address.
There were no zip codes back then. And some of the addresses were just a street and not a number, or no street at all, and just the town. And it's amazing. And if you look at all postcards, you'll see that that's the way they delivered things back then. It was totally different than it is now.
Yeah, I could not picture the Germans saying, Steve Smith from 124 Main Street.
No.
Canton, Ohio. I mean, I don't think they would be that exact, Well,
Bob, to add a little to that, from what I read also, is that the German interviewer would go around, again, propaganda. They would go around to the prisoners and themselves and ask them, where are you from? How are you doing? Why don't you say hello to your family? And where do you live? So it was actually the prisoners themselves telling where they came from and where they lived.
Right. In some cases, Mom said it was the prisoner themselves that would be speaking.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. I never knew this, but thank you so much. Congratulations with your book.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron.
Yes.
I live right across the street from the first lake. How close am I to your mom?
My mother lives on, I'm not tremendously familiar with Forked River. I don't live there, but my mother lives on Brentwood Place, which is off of Lake Barnegat Drive. Do you know where that is?
She's right down the road.
Okay.
Really? Isn't that amazing?
Do you have your second vaccination shot?
I had my first yesterday.
Okay.
So I'm waiting for my second, but I know where Brentwood Road is right down the road from me.
Yeah, there's Brentwood Place, and I don't know why Forked River does this, but there's Brentwood Place to the right and Brentwood Road to the left.
Right, exactly.
And they have similar numbers. Just crazy to think that way.
They're on either side. Lakeshore Drive is south and north. So depending on which side of Lakeshore Drive you're on, you're on Brentwood South or Brentwood North.
Yeah.
So when you get your second shot, then you can go over and say hi to Agnes.
I certainly will.
My mother would love it, by the way.
My mother would love it. She would love it.
I certainly will.
We've been very protective of her for 2 reasons. Number one is her hearing has deteriorated tremendously. And we've been asked to have her on different programs. And I don't want to embarrass her.
Right.
Because if you ask her a question, she might not hear it, which she doesn't in many cases, or she may hear what she thinks she thinks you asked, and she'll answer it to a different question. And so I don't want to do that, and expose her to any of that, and also expose her to COVID. I was concerned about. We've been asked to bring her in person to places,
I got to just tell Marvin, she loves signing the book. Okay.
I was going to ask you, would she sign a copy?
She loves signing the book. So if you go and visit her and you bring the book,
she'll sign it for you.
She feels like a celebrity signing the book.
Okay. Well, I get my second shot in 4 weeks, so I'll make it a date.
Good. Okay.
Please give us a holler. We'd love to see you over there.
If you go on to Ron's website, ronaldedwardnegra.com, and you message him directly and just tell him, who you are, and then we'll get you all the information where you can call me or email me or text me, and then we'll make it happen. Okay?
Very good.
She would love it. She'll feel like a celebrity.
Great.
And she's not like that, by the way. She's very modest. She really is.
But she loves it. She loves it. She this representative, the congressman, is coming on the weekend, and she said, am I gonna get to sign a book? We're like, yeah, Mom, you're gonna sign a book. So,
what does he want? We don't know him from a hole in the wall.
You're definitely gonna autograph the book.
There's a question.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people don't know. I mean, Weirtown is like part of Lacey, sort of.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know we have another celebrity. He got the Nobel Prize for the chip that they use in cameras.
Really?
That actually takes the image and translates it into a visual image electronically. Well, that's that guy that invented that thing lives in Weirtown. I don't know if he's still a member, but he was a member of my fishing club. So
what's his name?
We have a couple of celebrities around.
What is his name?
I offhand I can't remember.
Okay.
But
you have to protect Agnes with the politician. She may show up on a brochure that you'll be sending out.
Yes, we're aware of that.
I know.
We're aware of that.
I know. Well, we have to be kind. We have to be kind to him, because with all of this vaccination insanity, I was on the computer trying to get her vaccinated and my mother, who's 92, vaccinated, and I could not get an appointment for my mother-in-law. And I became so incensed by the fact that this woman was 101 years old. And to me, she's like this incredible woman. I can't believe I can't get her vaccinated. So I faxed him in Washington and his New Jersey office. And I faxed him a letter and I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if you were the one that got Agnes Joan Negra vaccinated? Guess what? He did.
All right. So. Just as a side note here, I got to be careful with my mother. My mother grew up in Boston and her family were all Democrats, Massachusetts. She moved to Nutley in 1938 and met my father. And that family was all Republican. So my mother used to blame everything on the Republicans, of course. And in 1941, she voted for, 1940, I think it was, she voted for Wendell Willkie. And she's never voted for another Democrat. So I got to make sure I control her, because our congressman's a Democrat. And I know she won't do anything, disrespectful, of course. But she may turn around and say to him, when are you going to straighten things out down there in Washington?
But we couldn't tell him you can't come, because he's the one that really got the vaccination to happen, So he said afterwards, he's like, well, I want to meet this incredible woman. We're like, okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. Hey, Rich, if I can share screen, I can run through how we identified the radio.
Sure thing. Go ahead, Al.
Oh, I'd love it.
Let's see. Here we go. This was the picture that they used in the book, and this is Ron and his sister in front of the radio. And we posted this to the Reflector, and I have things covering it up here. But Bill Sloma kicked in like 10 minutes and sent back a comparison photo that, this was the radio. And sure enough, and there's some other pictures from other sources, but it was her Philco like that with the record player and the shortwave bands.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Hey, leave
I
it
had,
to leave it to the members of the New Jersey Antique Radio Club to help you out immediately.
yeah.
It's great.
LR radios.
Ray sent me those pictures, and I'm so happy you showed them because I wasn't able to do that.
Val, this is Ray. A week or two ago, you know, as you may know, I collect radio postcards, but I was on eBay and someone was trying to sell a postcard like your mother made, only this woman was in Brooklyn, and I didn't keep a record of it, but again, it was some woman in Brooklyn doing the same thing your mother did, and she on the postcard she sent it to the address, and it wasn't a complete address. So on the front of it, she said, "Please, it's very important to find this person and deliver this message." So, you know, it was someone else doing the same thing.
Ray, you said you collect radio postcards? I didn't get that.
Yes, I do.
Help define that for me. I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Well, anything to do with radio.
Oh, okay.
Advertising,
Okay.
ham cards. I have, I don't know, I haven't counted them, but it's over 5,000 or 6,000 different ones,
Wow.
if you can believe
My
that.
mother, it was 1938. My mother moved to Nutley with her family, and she went over to North Arlington one day to visit a relative. And she went into what is now a cemetery. It's called Holy Cross Cemetery, if anybody's familiar with that, Ridge Road. And she went in, it was a park back then, and it was a pond. And she was walking around the pond with some of her relatives, and she saw this large bag off to the side. And they opened it up, and it was postcards from 1902, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And they were kind of pleasure postcards. She read some of them and it said, "Dear Mary, we're having a wonderful time in Atlantic City. See you soon." So my mother took them, and she took them home. And her father said, "No, you have to bring those back." She brought them back, and no one came back for them. So she kept them, and she has them to this day. There's quite a few. That's why I asked the question, Ray, what you collected. I go through these, and they're remarkable to read. Now, what she did about 20 years ago, there were some cards there for people that were addressed to people in Belleville and let me see, North Caldwell or Caldwell. And she contacted those people. Well, she tried to find the family, and she found a grandson of a woman that had written the postcard. And she said it to him, and he said, "I would love that card." So she got it to him, what she thought was the right thing to do. So there's a whole ton of postcards that I'll have to go through them, Ray, and see what's there.
We'll have to check them out.
You have to understand that around the turn of the century, or from 1900 to 1920 or so, postcards were the most popular means of communication. Few people, no telephones, no internet, no radios. So people communicated to each other by postcards. A postcard a day, or 2 postcards a day. So that was just a way of communicating them. So,
well, my mother wrote letters in 42, 43, 44, well, 43, 44, and she wrote them on postcards, and penny postcards, and she wrote the regular letters. And we have some of that stuff, but it was interesting. A woman wrote back to her and put $1 in the envelope and said, "Here, you can buy more postcards for your communications." People sent her stamps, American flags. It was remarkable, the response from the country, but postcards were the main source, Ray, as you said, even in 43 and 44.
And now you can't even find them in the post office.
What did he say?
One other factoid that I'm one of the few people around who still can remember December 7th, 1941.
Mm.
And it's been burned into my memory. So I remember that date and that time when we heard the message on the radio.
Amazing. My mother went
Hey,
to
Ron.
my mother went to my grandparents' house to announce her pregnancy that afternoon. And because of the Pearl Harbor news, she never that preceded her announcement that she was pregnant, so they never knew. That's that part of the story. I'm sorry, I cut somebody off.
Question. I think Morgan.
Yeah, hey, Ron, this is Marv again. I recently came across an auction, and it was of material from a radio station in New Jersey. And I can't remember the name of the station offhand, but one of the pieces on it was the actual original teletype that was sent out. And, you know, if you were at the museum, I don't know if they showed you much about teletypes there,
Yes.
but that's how the news came through. And one of them was the original teletype that came through to this radio station on the attack of Pearl Harbor. So I'm going to try to bid for it. If I win it, I'll try to send you a copy of it.
Thank you.
But
Okay,
it's
that
the
would be
exact,
great.
Thank you.
it's supposedly it's the wording that the announcer would use
Mhm.
of the attack on that day.
Wow.
I don't think many people saved that, and you can see it's just a torn piece that somebody just tore right off the teletype, and somehow it got saved.
That's got to be scarce. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Val and Ron, did your mother get a letter from the president when she turned 100?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
She had quite a few things. Just another side story here. In 1938, my mother met my father. Their first date was Rhett's Hut in Clifton, New Jersey, which some of you may know about. And also they went to the Franklin Theater in Nutley, and they saw a picture by the name of Boys Town with Spencer Tracy and Mickey Rooney. They were so taken by that. I think that's how my father got dedicated to youth and youth recreation, all that. But they were really taken by that story. And it had to do with delinquent kids in Omaha, Nebraska, running the streets, and Father Flanagan walking in and saying, okay, we have to do something to house these kids and keep them on the straight and narrow and educate them and all that. So Boys Town was started, and it started as an old house, and then it became a town with buildings and educational things and all that. Well, my parents were really taken by that. My dad got out of the war in March 46. And he said to my mother, I really want to start donating to Boys Town. And they did. And they've never missed a year. Even after my father passed in 93, he said to my mother, don't forget Boys Town. So my mother was recognized as the longest continuous donator to Boys Town in the history of Boys Town. And she was made on her 100th birthday an honorary citizen of Boys Town.
Wow.
So the type of things that she got were so neat. You know, the Congress did a proclamation, a resolution, the town of Forked River or Lacey Township did that as well. And it was really funny. I went over to Lacey and I walked into their town hall, and there were a couple of ladies there. And I said, my mother's going to be 100 years old. She's been a resident of Lacey for 45 years or 44, I think at the time. Do you guys do anything? Like, do you write a little letter? I was just looking for a letter, maybe from the mayor or the township committee or whatever. And the lady said, gee, I don't know. Let me check into this. She called me the next day and she said, we've never had anybody walk in here 100 years old asking for a letter.
Yeah, she was the trailblazer, so they did a proclamation.
They did a very nice proclamation, Lacey. Hats off to Lacey. They really did a nice job. But she heard from different organizations and different people, which was very nice. She worked for Hoffman the Roach for many years in Nutley, and she was dedicated to that company. And Roach has since left Nutley, and they're all over the country. And it's not sad to say, it's not the community type company that she worked for. Fabulous benefits, by the way. So it was a little difficult even getting a letter out of them. Everybody kind of pointed to somebody else.
Yeah. The reason I ask is my grandmother lived to be 101. And she got a letter from President Clinton when she was 100 years old. So I was wondering if they were still doing that.
She got President Trump, and she also got a letter from Barbara Bush. My mother was not Barbara. what was his wife's? Laura Bush. My mother was a big fan of Laura Bush and Barbara, but basically Laura, because Laura was into reading and the libraries and all that. But she got a very nice note from Laura Bush as well.
Very nice.
Hey guys, this is Marv again. You mentioned Ruts Hut.
Yes.
It's still there, and they're still using the same grease to fry their hot dogs in.
They are.
But it tastes great for 2 days.
I think they're using the same grease that my mother-in-law and father-in-law went on their first date.
I have two friends that are big fans of Ruts Hut, and that's where they used to go on their date, to get oil fried frankfurters. I couldn't believe when they told me these things existed, but
they drop them in the oil and they blow up.
So on their 70, I think it was his 75th or 80th birthday, we the whole family took a ride to Ruts Hut and got hot dogs.
NJ.com just said that they're the best hot dogs in New Jersey last year.
Yeah, they've been rated that over and over.
They are.
Your cholesterol goes up quite a bit after that, but they taste very good.
Any other questions? Anything else? Any comments about what we just saw, what we're hearing? All right. Well, all I can think, say thank you so very much. But I do want to ask you, where can we buy your book?
Right.
It's available on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. And if you go on Ron's website, ronaldedwardnegra.com, you can click on one of the links on there and it'll take you right to where to purchase the book. And if you have any problems, if you want the book and you can't get it through one of those sites, just message Ron through his website and we'll make sure that you get one. Okay.
And you can buy it at InfoAge gift shop.
Oh, that's right. There you go.
It's available at InfoAge gift shop. That's right.
We wanted to do, and this is not a brag, please don't take it that way. When we were there, we wanted to do something, so we donated a bunch of books to the gift shop. Oh. We just thought that might be a nice thing for people that come and visit.
InfoAge appreciates that. That's our mothership. Yes.
Yes. And we'll definitely make a plan for Agnes to come and sit in the parlor and get pictures taken. That's intriguing to me.
Nice thing. Yep.
I think that that would be great.
Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
We could all come down and get our book signed by her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
I think
I lost.
Steve.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is Steve Miller. I'm just wondering, for how many years did Berlin Radio keep this up? I guess later in the war they didn't, I would guess.
They stopped in 1944. Halfway through 44, they stopped doing it.
Did they have anybody except flyers? I mean, by that time there were an awful lot of prisoners, right?
It was American flyers that they
all flyers. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we're going to post that information on our website and our communicator, where to buy your book also.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Ray Chase wrote a wonderful review as well that was in one of the newsletters. Which one, Ray, was it in?
I don't recall which one it was, but
I think it was maybe January or February. But anyway, he did a wonderful job. Thank you, Ray.
It was in the Radio Club newsletter and also in the InfoAge newsletter.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Very nice. Thank you.
Okay, guys. So happy to have you. Thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, folks. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.